ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय वन्दे श्रीरमणऋषे आचार्यस्य पदाब्जम् यो मे दर्शयधीशम् भान्तं ध्वान्तमतीत्यः अखण्डसच्चिदानन्दे परब्रह्मण्यलौकिके विलसन्तं गुरुं नौमिं सर्वदा हृद्यहं भजे. Day by Day with Bhagavan, episode number 5. 9/12/1945 morning. When yesterday Bhagavan referred to Tilak's article in Hindustan, I said, our Nagamma has also written an account in Telugu of the visit of Bhagavan to Skandashramam on 25/11/45 and the happenings there. Nagamma had told me previously about this. This morning, Nagamma brought the writing and showed it to Bhagavan. He read a little and then said, "Let her read it, we shall all listen," and returned the paper to her. Before she could read it out, Bhagavan began talking to us about other matters. Bhagavan said that the old disciple Kandaswami was anxious to build a separate ashramam for Bhagavan. He inspected various places on the hill and in the forests to select a site and finally suggested the present Skandashramam site, and then Bhagavan also approved of it. Thereupon, Kandaswami began converting what was a thick forest of prickly pear on the mountain slope. The result of his labors, unaided by any at the time, is the ashramam we see now. He added, "You cannot imagine the state the site was in originally. Kandaswami worked with almost superhuman effort, achieved by his own hands what even 4 people together could not have done. He removed all the prickly pear, reduced stone and boulder to level ground, created a garden, and raised the ashramam. We got 4 coconut trees for planting. To plant them properly, Kandaswami dug huge square pits about 10 feet deep. That would give you an idea of the amount of labor he put into the work he took on hand. He was a strong, well-built man." Then Bhagavan showed us a group photo in self-realization in which the above Kandaswami, Perumal Swami, Palani Swami, Sivaprakasham Pillai, Narayana Reddy, Ishwara Swami, etc. are sitting with Bhagavan. The photo was taken on a rock behind Virupaksha cave. He then added, "Kandaswami looks like a weak and lean man in this photo. That is because he went away from us for more than a month and was doing tapas at Yelu Chulai, 7 Springs, and was purposely underfeeding himself. Before that, he was a muscular, well-built man. He went away with only some flour and a little jaggery to 7 Springs and lived there for about 1.5 months, living only on these scanty provisions. One night at about 7 p.m., myself, Perumal Swami, Nagappa Chitti, and possibly 1 or 2 others went in search of Kandaswami and found him sleeping inside the rocks at 7 Springs. Perumal Swami went inside and brought out Kandaswami's conch. Kandaswami and Perumal Swami were adepts at blowing long, continuous blasts on the conch. Perumal Swami blew a loud, long blast outside the cave. Kandaswami woke up and, recognizing that it was Perumal Swami that was blowing the conch, came out. Seeing me, he prostrated himself. We all spent the night there. We finished what was left of the flour and jaggery which he had and burnt away the firewood he had gathered, made it impossible for him to continue there, and persuaded him to come away with us. It was because of his fasting and tapas that you find him lean in this photo. Bhagavan proceeded to describe how Perumal Swami and Kandaswami used to blow in concert on the conch, and how when Bhagavan was in Virupaksha cave, Perumal Swami, Kandaswami, and Palaniswami used to go about begging in the streets for food and bring it up the hill, and all there used to share it. Before Perumal Swami joined them, Palaniswami and Ayyaswami and Kandaswami would go to a chatram, and the Manigar would give food for all. But when Perumal Swami also joined, the Manigar began questioning why an addition was necessary. Thereupon, Perumal Swami laid down that they should no longer go to the chatram or be at the mercy of the Manigar, but would go and beg in the town. Accordingly, a party of 4 or more would leave the cave on this errand. When leaving the cave, they would blow a long blast on their conches. This was an announcement to the townspeople that Bhagavan's party had left the cave on their begging mission. The party would give another blast when they reached the foot of the hill. A third call would be sounded at the entrance to the street. All the residents of the street would be ready with their offerings, and the party would march along the street singing some Sivanamavali and collecting the offerings. The food collected was ample, it seems, for all who gathered near Bhagavan and all the monkeys, etc. Marital garland of letters was specially composed for use by the begging party. Bhagavan humorously added, "Marital garland of letters fed us for many years." 10/12/1945. Yesterday or the day before in the morning, a snake was seen by Chinnaswami and others in the ashramam premises somewhere near Bhagavan's hall. We heard the cries, "What kind of snake is it? Beat it! Beat it!" When we heard the noise of actual beating, Bhagavan cried out, "Yar adikkirathu? Yar adikkirathu? Who is beating it?" Apparently, this remonstrance of Bhagavan was not heard by the party, and the snake was killed. Bhagavan added, "Ivengalai appadi rendu koduttal appo theriyum." If these persons are beaten like that, then they will know what it means. Night. Mr. P. C. Desai read out in the hall the manuscript prepared by Mr. M. Venkatarama Iyer on Arunachala Mahatyam. 11/12/1945. About 6:30 p.m., a young man, Mr. Ramachandra Reddy of Begumpet, Hyderabad, Deccan, who came here a few months back and stayed a day or two and took some pictures of Bhagavan with his cine camera, told Bhagavan that he had a film of about 100 feet ready, and if permitted, he would project it before Bhagavan. Bhagavan had no objection, and so he made 2 persons hold a white sheet at the western end of the hall, and on that screen projected the pictures he had taken. Bhagavan coming from the hall, meeting Narayana Iyer's son Ramanathan, holding their youngest child, touching with his stick and speaking to him, etc. Bhagavan coming from the cowshed, climbing the hill, and then returning from there, being followed by Mrs. Taliyar Khan and Miss Suna Dorabji and some other scenes. We all appreciated the pictures, but Bhagavan could not see them clearly. It was a revelation to us how poor his sight was. Then, for his benefit, The screen was held near the southern window opposite Bhagavan's sofa, and the pictures were projected again, but he could not see them clearly even then. Bhagavan said in this connection that once Mr. Grant Duff or someone else wrote to the ashramam that they saw some films of Bhagavan in Hollywood. Bhagavan said, "We knew nothing about it, but apparently someone had come and snapped me when I was moving on the hill." Mr. K. K. Nambiyar also took about 100 feet of film some 6 months back, but it seems to have been a failure. Our Venkatu said in the hall that some years ago Jayadev Lal's friend took some pictures with a cine camera, but as they had heard nothing more of them, they too must have been a failure. 12/12/1945 morning. Mr. Desai continued his reading about 10 a.m. When he read about one Kuppayar who was lame and afterwards got the use of his legs about 40 years ago, and Bhagavan said he knew of the incident and that he had seen Kuppayar after he got better, I said, "Adu Bhagavan cheydadunanam, namakku chelravillai. Adanudaiya tiruttitanam thanadu." That is, it would appear that it was really done by Bhagavan, though he does not speak to us about it. It is his stealthy way. I said so because Bhagavan's old classmate Ranga Iyer and one other at least who could be trusted to know about it had assured me that from what Bhagavan had told them of this incident, they were convinced that it was only Bhagavan who had worked the miracle. When I made the above remark in the hall to those near me in Bhagavan's presence and hearing, he did not deny my assumption. Bhagavan related to me once the following incident that happened when he was living on the hill. A cartman was engaged one night by a lady new to this town to take her to some street. The cartman purposely took her to some out of the way place near the hill and was about to attack her for her jewels or molest her. Then two constables appeared on the scene and threatened the cartman and escorted the lady to her proper destination. The lady noted the numbers of the constables and made enquiries afterwards about them, and it was ascertained that no human police constable had ever done such a service on that night. Ranga Iyer believes that this was also really Bhagavan's work. I concur with him now, for from the way Bhagavan narrated the incident, even at the time I first heard it from his lips, I had the same suspicion, though Bhagavan ascribed the incident to Arunachala. We cannot tax Bhagavan with falsehood. He describes what he did as having been done by Arunachala, because he and Arunachala are one. Afternoon. As I was entering the hall about 2:50 p.m., Bhagavan was reading out from the Tamil Arunachala Puranam the verses in which it is said that Gauri, after crossing the several streets of Arunachalam, reached Gautama's ashramam. When Bhagavan came to the verses dealing with Gautama's joy at Gauri's coming to his ashramam, Bhagavan could not go on, for tears filled his eyes and emotion choked his voice. So he laid aside the book and Desai continued reading of the manuscript. I may here record that I have noticed on more than one occasion in the past how Bhagavan could not proceed with the reading of any deeply devotional portions of Tamil works such as Thevaram and devotional hymns of Thayumanavar. This afternoon, when I took from Bhagavan the above Arunachala Puranam and referred to the portion which moved him so deeply and told him, in effect, that I had discovered his plight, which he tried to hide from us all, he remarked, I don't know how those people who perform Kalakshepam and explain such passages to audiences manage to do it without breaking down. I suppose they must first make their hearts hard like stone before starting their work. In the course of Mr. Desai's reading of the manuscripts, he read about the holy hill having 8 faces. To a question of mine whether, as a matter of fact, this hill has 8 faces, Bhagavan replied, the Purana says that the Ashtavasus, having flattered themselves in Brahma's presence, lost all their merit, and to regain it, they came and did penance here all around Arunachala. They were given darshan by Shiva at one and the same time, by Shiva assuming 8 faces in this hill. All those 8 Vasus are still in the shape of 8 spurs round this hill. What is meant by saying all those Vasus are still here as hills and doing penance round this holy hill, it is difficult to understand. Does it only mean they are living on these hills and doing penance, or are they themselves these hills? He added, it is difficult now for us to locate where the Ashtadikpalakas actually stood sentry, whether at the spots where the Ashtadik lingams are now found, or whether the lingams are those which were installed and worshipped by them. We cannot be sure where exactly Gauri did penance and where Gautama had his ashramam, but it would be safe to assume that Gauri did her penance in the region covered by Pavalakundru, Durga temple and Pachayamman Koil, and that Gautama's ashramam must have also been near this region. Bhagavan also said that whatever temple might have originally existed on or about Pavalakundru would seem to have disappeared, probably on account of Tipu's invasion, that the present temple there was built only about 50 years ago, and that he once discovered the remains of an old cannon between Pavalakundru and the northern wall of the big temple. It would appear that Tipu Sultan placed cannon near Pavalakundru and attacked the northern wall of the temple, which was then used as a fort. The northern wall still bears traces of cannon shots. It seems the information given by Bhagavan was conveyed to the government and the cannon was carried away and kept as a relic. Night. For the benefit of those who could not see Bhagavan's film on the 11th night, it was again shown today at about 6:30 p.m. in the dining hall. Before we went there, Bhagavan said that Yogananda and also one Shukla, who was a guru of the American lady Mrs. Noe, had taken cine pictures of Bhagavan, and that the latter's pictures might have eventually reached Hollywood and come to the notice of Grant Duff or others who wrote to the ashramam. 16/12/1945. In the Sunday Times of 16/12/45, an article entitled In Silent Adoration of Sri Maharshi by V. F. Gunaratna of Ceylon had appeared. I perused it in the hall. Bhagavan remarked, Dr. Syed has read it and thinks it insipid. Thereupon I said, there is nothing to complain of in it. In fact, I read it long ago, probably about last Jayanti time, when Mr. Ramachandra of Colombo showed me the manuscript. The article states Bhagavan's teaching correctly if briefly, though it has nothing new to tell us who are already well acquainted with him and his teaching. 17/12/1945 morning. An article in the Sunday Herald of 16/12/45 entitled The Maharshi Who Transforms Man's Life by Dr. Syed was read out in the hall. Dr. Syed said the title he gave was different, but the editor had changed it. Bhagavan also perused another article by Dr. Syed on the significance of Muharram, which appeared in Free India of 16/12/45. Evening. Dr. Syed said that the title he gave was Ramana Maharshi's Invisible Work. 19/12/1945 afternoon. Some lady introduced another lady to Bhagavan, saying, Subbu has come. Bhagavan could not make out who this Subbu was, but when it was explained to him who the lady was, he said, Subbukuttiya, is it Subbukutti? And recognized her as the younger sister of Chellam Bhattar of Tiruchuri, who had visited him recently. This lady seems to have been a small girl with whom Bhagavan had played in his boyhood. He told us, this lady had an aunt who used to take me to her house and pet me when I was a child. I asked, where is that lady now? Bhagavan said, she died long ago and her husband married again and had several children. Dr. Syed is old and has various ailments which render it very difficult for him to go round the hill. However, as he found that Bhagavan sets great store by his disciples going round the hill, he and his wife decided to try it about a month back. They took Bhagavan's permission and went round and came back without any difficulty or untoward incident. Today again they both came to Bhagavan and took permission to go round the hill. Bhagavan used to say that if one went round the hill once or twice, the hill itself would draw one to go round it again. I have found it true. Now this is happening to Dr. Syed. My 2 sons and their wives and children and about 10 more relations of mine arrived this night, and when I introduced them, Bhagavan made kind inquiries whether I had been able to get suitable accommodation, etc. for them. Bhagavan is equally solicitous about the comfort of everybody who comes here. How can one help loving him and becoming bound to his feet? 21/12/1945. This is Bhagavan's Jayanti, 65th birthday. The crowd of devotees is greater than usual, many of them having come from distant parts. There were the usual decorations, music, feast, and feeding of the poor. In the afternoon, a number of prayers and verses in honor of Bhagavan, specially composed for the occasion, were read out. A message sent by Swami Sivananda of Rishikesh was also read out. 23/12/1945 afternoon. Monsieur Georges Lebeau, Private Secretary to the Governor of Pondicherry and Chief of Cabinet of the French government there, came to Bhagavan. He could not easily squat down on the floor, and so Bhagavan asked us to give him a seat. We placed for him a chair opposite to Bhagavan. He had brought with him his request written in French. After expressing his greetings to Bhagavan through some interpreters who came with him and who spoke Tamil, he produced his French writing. Our Balarama Reddy tried to interpret the same to Bhagavan, but he found it rather difficult as the French was rather high flown. So we sent for Mr. Osborne, whose wife and 3 children have been living for nearly 5 years here and who himself returned from Siam about a month back. And he came and explained the gist as follows. I know little, I am even less, but I know what I am speaking about. I am not asking for words, explanations, or arguments, but for active help by Maharshi's spiritual influence. I did some sadhana and attained to a stage where the ego was near being annihilated. I wanted the ego to be annihilated, but at the same time, I wanted to be there to see it being killed. This looked like having contradictory desires. I pray Maharshi may do something by his influence in which I fully believe to enable me to reach the final stage and kill the ego. I do not want mere arguments or explanations addressed to the mind, but real help. Will Maharshi please do this for me? He had also written out another question. I have been having for my motto, liberate yourself. Is that all right, or would Maharshi suggest any other motto or ideal for me? Bhagavan kept silent for a few minutes, all the while, however, steadily looking at the visitor. After a few minutes, the visitor said, I feel that I am not now in a state in which I can readily receive any influence which Maharshi may be pleased to send. After some time I shall come again when I am in that state of exaltation in which I may be able to assimilate his influence or spiritual help. He added, May I have a little conversation with this interpreter, Mr. Osborne, and come here some other time? Bhagavan said, Yes, you can certainly go and have some talk. They both went out. The Sarvadhikari gave the visitor some fruits and coffee, and he took leave, expressing his desire to come here some other time. After the visitor left the hall, Bhagavan said, He seems to have read about all this and to have done some sadhana. He is certainly no novice. Someone suggested that the books in French in our library on Bhagavan's teachings might be shown to the visitor. They were accordingly taken out and shown to him while he was still with the Sarvadhikari having coffee. He looked at them and said he had read them all. Mr. Subramanya Iyer, Assistant Director of Public Health Madras, who has been coming to Bhagavan for some years now, brought an album containing 41 photos taken by Dr. T. N. Krishnaswamy on 25/11/45 of Bhagavan at Skandashramam and presented it to the ashramam. Bhagavan looked at the pictures, which were all good except one or two spoiled slightly by the sunlight. 24/12/1945 morning. Bhagavan asked Mr. T. P. Ramachandra Iyer to read out a letter written by Mr. Subramanya Iyer Dindigal, a brother of our Vishwanatha Brahmachari. It gave an account of the grand way in which Bhagavan's Jayanti was celebrated at Tiruchuri on the 21st instant. Mr. Subramanya Iyer was writing a letter to Mr. S. Doraswamy Iyer giving an account of the conversation between Georges Lebeau and Bhagavan. It was read out in the hall for the benefit of all assembled. I also read out the account of the same happening recorded in this diary. A visitor asked if he could do both pranayama and dhyana. Bhagavan said, one is a help to the other. Whether one need do pranayama depends on one's pakwa or fitness. Evening. After Parayana, Mr. Osborne said that before Monsieur Georges Lebeau left, he said the following: I had the experience described by me twice, first by my own efforts, and the second time under the silent influence of a French philosopher now dead, who held my wrist and brought me to the same stage without any effort on my part. Both times I kept approaching the breaking point in waves but shrank back. It was because of the second experience that I decided that Maharshi could again bring me to that point. To the visitor who pursued the question about pranayama, Bhagavan said, the aim is to make the mind one pointed. For that, pranayama is a help, a means, not only for dhyana, but in every case where we have to make the mind one pointed, it may be even for a purely secular or material purpose, it is good to make pranayama and then start the other work. The mind and prana are the same, having the same source. If one is controlled, the other is also controlled at the same time. If one is able to make the mind one pointed without the help of pranayama, he need not bother about pranayama. But one who cannot at once control the mind may control the breath, and that will lead to control of the mind. It is something like pulling a horse by the reins and making it go in one direction. Bhagavan asked Mr. Osborne if Monsieur Lebeau had mentioned the name of the French philosopher who had helped him to attain the experience referred to by him. Mr. Osborne could not give the name, but said the philosopher, now dead, seems to have been one trained in and following the ancient Greek philosophy. Bhagavan remarked it could not be Guénon, as that philosopher is said to be dead. Bhagavan continued, he says he has liberate yourself for his motto. But why should there be any motto? Liberation is our very nature. We are that. The very fact that we wish for liberation shows that freedom from all bondage is our real nature. That has not got to be freshly acquired. All that is necessary is to get rid of the false notion that we are bound. When we achieve that, there will be no desire or thought of any sort. So long as one desires liberation, so long, you may take it, one is in bondage. He also said, people are afraid that when ego or mind is killed, the result may be a mere blank and not happiness. What really happens is that the thinker, the object of thought and thinking, all merge in the one source, which is consciousness and bliss itself, and thus that state is neither inert nor blank. I don't understand why people should be afraid of that state in which all thought cease to exist and the mind is killed. They are every day experiencing that state in sleep. There is no mind or thought in sleep. Yet, when one rises from sleep, one says, I slept happily. Sleep is so dear to everyone that no one, prince or beggar, can do without it. And when one wants to sleep, Nothing, however high in the range of all the worldly enjoyments, can tempt him from much desired sleep. A king wants to go to sleep, let us say. His queen, dear to him above all other things, comes then and disturbs him. But even her he then brushes aside and prefers to go to sleep. That is an indication of the supreme happiness that is to be had in that state where all thoughts cease. If one is not afraid of going to sleep, I don't see why one should be afraid of killing the mind or ego by sadhana. Bhagavan also quoted during the above discourse the Tamil stanza, quoted already in this diary, which ends by saying that so long as the cloud of ego hides the moon of jnana, the lily of the self will not bloom. 25/12/1945 afternoon. When I went into the hall to take permission from Bhagavan to go round the hill, Mr. N. Pisharoti, our compounder, was reading out some verses recently composed by him in Malayalam. Mr. Chinta Dikshitulu's Telugu composition Ramana Gopala was read out in the hall. It was greatly enjoyed by all. Bhagavan also appreciated it and thought it worthwhile being read out to all. It was done accordingly. 26/12/1945 afternoon. Pointing to Mr. Venkatachalam, father of the girl Sauris who visited Bhagavan a few years ago for the first time and wrote an account of her experiences in the form of a letter to a friend in the Telugu journal Bharati, Bhagavan said, "He came this morning. I at once asked Dr. Srinivasa Rao also to come and stand by Mr. Venkatachalam and showed them both to all so that none should afterwards mistake the one for the other. They are so much alike. The resemblance was even greater 2 or 3 years ago." A book has recently been received by Bhagavan in which Mr. Venkatachalam's letters to Mr. C. Dikshitulu during 1 year, 1938 or 39, are published. The portions relating to Bhagavan in those letters were read out by Mr. Venkatachalam in the hall. 27/12/1945 morning. Bhagavan was reading an account written by Nagamma to her brother on Bhagavan's visit to Skandashramam on 25/11/45. Bhagavan had read only a little when I suggested it might be read out so that all might hear it. Accordingly, it was read by Nagamma and translated by Mr. Venkatachalam. We all appreciated it. Night. It was reported to Bhagavan that Echamma was seriously ill for 3 days and unconscious for 2 days. Bhagavan said, "Appappo appidi irukkiradundu, appidiye kannai mudindi irundiduva." She used to be like that now and then. She would remain like that, closing eyes. From these words, I imagined that Bhagavan meant she would recover. 28/12/45 morning. It seems HML passed away at about 2:30 a.m. and the matter was reported to Bhagavan only about 8 a.m. in the hall. The talk naturally was about HML and how from 1907 she persevered in offering food to Bhagavan without any break. Bhagavan also remembered 3 other persons who fed him when he was under the Iluppai tree in the big temple. One was Dasi Rajambal, who, it seems, took a vow that she would not eat before feeding Bhagavan, and was feeding him for about 2 months until he moved away to Gurumurtam. It seems she continued to send food even to Gurumurtam for a day or two, but Bhagavan asked her to discontinue it. It seems this lady died only recently. Bhagavan mentioned also Meenakshi Ammal, a Kammala woman, and said she was like a Rakshasi. She would daily go around the hill and then come and cook and bring food to me. After some time, she began assuming control over everybody, including Palaniswamy. If others brought food, etc., she would give some to me, and whatever remained, she used to take away with her. Bhagavan said in the afternoon, our Nagappa's mother Ratnamma also used to bring food in those days. Of food supplied regularly, Kattalai, as Bhagavan put it, he said, you don't know what trouble all such regular supply involves. Those who make it expect some control over you. It also creates some aham in them. Every one of them expects you to take something. One would say, Adiye un kayyolai koncham veyadi. I say, serve something with your own hand. And then each would serve something. The quantity would become too great. Any number of people bring any number of things and at all times, and you must take them. Sometimes we used to mix up all things received, milk, food, porridge, etc., and drink it if the resulting mixture was a liquid. Swamihood is very difficult. You cannot realize it. I am speaking from 50 years' experience. After such experience in Gurumurtam, I wanted to avoid it by not remaining in any one place. Afternoon. Shantamma came and reported to Bhagavan that Echamma passed away peacefully and people did not even know when exactly life departed, and that though she was unconscious for nearly 2 days, when she had a little consciousness at one time during these 2 days, the one question she asked was, has food been sent to Bhagavan? Later, I learned from Nagamma that this was not quite correct. It seems that somebody, to test whether Echamma's mind was clear and not wandering, asked the question, has food been sent to Bhagavan today? And Echammal at once showed recognition. Her body was cremated. I thereupon asked Bhagavan, it is said in the case of such people, they should not be cremated but buried. Bhagavan replied, it seems she herself had mentioned that her body should be cremated and that her bones alone should be taken and buried in her village. I also asked Bhagavan what he meant by his statement last night that she would often remain with closed eyes. He explained, she practiced concentrating on the head center and would be in a trance-like state for even 2 or 3 days with breath fully controlled. I told her it was only Laya and one should not be satisfied with it but must get out of it and beyond it. One Mr. Joshi, introduced by our Cheganlal Yogi, put the following questions and Bhagavan gave the following answers. Question 1. When I think, who am I? The answer comes, I am not this mortal body, but I am Chaitanya, Atma or Paramatma. And suddenly another question arises. Why has Atma come into Maya? Or in other words, why has God created this world? Answer. To inquire who am I really means trying to find out the source of the ego or the I thought. You are not to think of other thoughts such as I am not this body, etc. Seeking the source of I serves as a means of getting rid of all other thoughts. We should not give scope to other thoughts, such as you mentioned, but must keep the attention fixed on finding out the source of the I thought by asking, as each thought arises, to whom the thought arises, and if the answer is I get the thought, by asking further, who is this I and whence its source? Question 2. Is Atma a subject of Sakshatkara? Answer. The Atma is as it is. It is Sakshat always. There are not two Atmas, one to know and one to be known. To know it is to be it. It is not a state where one is conscious of anything else. It is consciousness itself. Question 3. I do not understand the meaning of Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Brahman is real, the world is unreal. Does this world have real existence or not? Does the Jnani not see the world, or does he see it in a different form? Answer. Let the world bother about its reality or falsehood. Find out first about your own reality. Then all things will become clear. What do you care how the Jnani sees the world? You realize yourself and then you will understand. The Jnani sees that the world of names and forms does not limit the self and that the self is beyond them. Question 4. I do not know how to worship, so kindly show me the way to worship. Answer. Is there a worshipper and a worshipped? Find out the I, the worshipper. That is the best way. Always the seer must be traced. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Sarvam Sri Ramanarpanamastu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.